the NDC took over from the NPP at 7.2% GDP. That was when President Kufuor ended his term. This economy was growing at 7.2%. When the NDC took over in 2008, in 2009, the economy dropped from the 7.2% they inherited to 4.1%. And I'd like to stop intermittently to remind you that these are not my data. These are data that you in the press can verify, and you in the press can question whether or not what we are saying here is correct. We're trying to tell us the state of the economy that the NPP inherited and what the NDC inherited. So at 7.2, the NDC contracted the economy the first year in office in 2009 to 4.1%. In 2010, the economy grew from 4.1 to 7.9, and I'll tell you why. In 2011, the economy grew again to 14%, which I told you earlier. Now remember, I told you that before the NPP left office, we discovered oil in commercial quantities, and in 2010, we started producing oil in this country. That accounted for the 7.9 increase from 2009. Because from 2008, 2009, there was no oil production, even though it was discovered in commercial quantity. We started production in 2010. And you saw that the jump there in the graph from 4.1 to 7.9 is evidence of the oil production that started in 2010. And true to that form, you see in 2011, the economy grew further to 14%. Now, having benefited from the oil and now needing to manage the economy, to make it steady and to continue that growth momentum that we had in 2010, 2011, the NDC lost it. The economy started contracting again in 2012. In 2013, as I told you earlier, when former President Mahama took over from himself, the economy from 14%, when he was the chairman of the Economic Management Committee, I hear them a lot these days talking about people should resign, people should vacate their office. We're going to talk about that number today. 7.3, he went to 4% GDP. The economy contracted. In 2015, at this point under IMF tutelage, NDC still contracted the economy from the 4% to 3.9 and then to 3.7%, as I told you earlier, before he left office. So this is it. If you look at it, from where the economy was growing at 7%, NDC took it. If you draw a flat line, you see that whatever they inherited from President Kufuor, they lost it, even with the benefit of oil production. This is a picture for you to keep in mind when they come to your platforms and studios and they are telling you about how somebody mismanaged the economy. It's a graphic image for you to capture and work with. The economic performance under NDC, we're looking now at the real sector. And the real sector is very important, ladies and gentlemen, because that is where most of us operate. So the person who operates a small chop bar, the person who operates a small barber shop, the person who practices or does subsistence or medium small scale farming, the person who operates a decoration shop, the person who does all the basic things that we do amongst ourselves Ghanaians, the very things we say that it is reserved for Ghanaians, not for foreigners, for which reason Guta is very much aggressive on those things which we support them. That sector is the real sector. And under the NDC, the numbers here you will see shows that they impoverish Ghanaians. In 2016, my numbers, I will do it in reverse. In 2013, the real sector, service sector grew by 10.1%. In 2013, the service sector grew by 10.1%. In 2014, it went down by 5.2%. In 2015, it grew 2.9%. In 2016, when former President John Mahama was leaving office, it shrunk from what they found in 2013, 10.1% became 2.8%. What this means is that if you were operating in the real sector, your fortunes were dwindling. You were not producing. The economy in that sector was contracting. It's not growing. consistently from 2013 when it was 10.1, it went 14, it contracted, it became 5.2. In 2015, it contracted, became 2.9 and 2.8 when he left office. In the agri sector, it's the same story. Same story. 2013, it was 5.7. In 2014, it was 0.9. In 2015, it was 2.1. And in 2016, it was 2.7, contracting as it was. Again, the industry sector, you hear them, they talk about they have created industries, they have done this. The evidence in numbers doesn't support it. These are the numbers they themselves reported in their budgets, not our number, their numbers. In 2013, industry grew by 4.3%. This was where he started when he took over from himself. It contracted in 2014, 1.1. So when they tell you about shoe factory in Kumasi, you ask them where is the number to justify that. When they tell you about Commander Sugar Factory, ask them where is the number to support that. Because the sector doesn't reflect the growth they think they are talking about. In 2015, we saw that marginal growth there about 1.2%. So it's about 0.1% increase. And then by 2016, they went back to where they started, about 4.3%. So we're still talking about economic performance under the former NDC administration led by John Dramani Mahama. So as I said earlier, the implication of this very dismal performance of the NDC in the real sector, as I told you earlier, this is where most of us Ghanaians will engage for our livelihoods. The NDC impoverished the Ghanaians under Mahama. In that sense, the poor, the vulnerable in our society, and in fact, the majority of Ghanaians were heavily impoverished by former President John Dramani Mahama and the NDC. Now, I'll show you this graph again. So this shows you the composite performance data of the NDC. So the red one here should tell you about industry. If you can increase that a bit, but if you see the numbers, it just shows all the numbers that I've indicated to you, about 5.7%, all the numbers that I've shown you. So clearly it just tells you that the NDC has not really done right by us, and they have not managed this economy any better than they would like to claim they have done. The numbers don't support that. So the management of the economy under NDC, we're looking at monetary sector development. We talk a lot about inflation, they talk a lot about exchange rate depreciation, they talk a lot about prime rates and the rest. We're looking at depreciation under the NDC. In 2013, the cedi depreciated 14.5%. In 2014, there was a huge spike, about 31.3% our currency depreciated. That led them to go to the IMF, and under the IMF program, the cedi further depreciated by 16%. In 2016, it went down again by 10%. Performance under the NDC monetary sector development, we're looking at inflation at this point. In 2013, inflation stood at 13.5% when former President Mahama took over from himself. In 2014, it went to 17%. It increased. In 2015, it went to 17.7%. And in 2016, it stood at 15.4%. And this year, you look at the effect of the IMF program. So year on year, inflation, if you show the graph, it shows that the NDC is actually increasing inflation, because if you saw, they took it from 13.5, they never reduced it. They would like to tell you about some days under former President Mills, a few years under him, to say that they had a single-digit inflation. This year is their number. I don't see any single-digit inflation here. It was 13.5, 17%, 17.7%, and 15.4%. They should, when they tell you about single-digit inflation, show them this, that this number exists. They should refer to this one too. Economic performance under the NDC, monetary sector development policy rate. And this is the rate that the Bank of Ghana borrows, or banks lend money from the Bank of Ghana. So it's the key indicator of the price of money. And in 2013, when former John Dramani Mahama took office, a period where everything should be fine. There was no disruption in the economic environment. He likes to go and talk about some China slowdown in production in China. That has nothing to do with us. Has nothing absolutely to do with us, but that's what he likes to use to explain their underperformance. So in 2013, 16% was the prime rate. He inherited that as a full president in 2013. Quickly, in 2014, it took it to 21%. Things were deteriorating very, very fast. And in 2015, it took it to 26%. 26%. So he had to go to the IMF. He was forced to go to the IMF. Nothing in the environment necessitated NDC going to the IMF. And so they'll tell you that we said they should go to the IMF, and we were ridiculing them and were telling them because there was evidence to the fact that they mismanaged the economy, for which reason they had to go there. There was no COVID back then. I don't know if you were here. There was no COVID. And so they went to the IMF, and the prime rate kept increasing. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a short summary of what we experienced under the NDC. Under the NDC, the growth of our country continues to plummet despite significant inflows of oil revenues and IMF-supported program in 2015. Abysmal real sector performance, especially in the agri sector. Sustained deterioration of the cedi against the dollar. High inflation in an undisrupted economic environment. And I want us to emphasize that there was nothing happening in this world. If anything, economies that were struggling wherever had their own internal issues. But then because the NDC didn't manage this economy, they did not build a resilient economy, we lost all the gains that they inherited from President Kufuor and from the benefit of oil, which shot our GDP to 14% in 2011. So we have high cost of borrowing. I just went through the MPR numbers for you, the prime rates for you. So it was very expensive here in this country to borrow. So when they tell you that they have managed the economy better, you ask them, and they are talking about the created job. Ask them, who were creating the jobs? Because if you're borrowing money at the rates the NDC was supervising in this economy, nobody was investing to create any jobs. So it doesn't line up. It's like somebody say, I got a straight A's in a BEC, but I never went to JHS. It's not possible. So if they were creating jobs and they today are pretending in your studios, on your platform, saying that, oh, they can do this, they can do this. What is the evidence? If you are borrowing money at 34, some places 48 at a time, which company or which business was creating employment for Ghanaians in this country? Zero. So my friends from the media, such was the economy the NPP inherited from the NDC in 2016-2017. But the story didn't stay the same. The trajectory of our economy changed under the NPP.